What's up, everybody? Welcome to the live stream. You caught me right in the middle of chewing ice. Is that... Oh, my God. Oh, my God. That, wow. Some people must be really tuning out right now. I thought I had one more chorus to go. Took a big bite full of ice. Let me tell you. A little crunchy ice maker. You get these things? They're all over TikTok Shop right now. We bought ours from Costco because we bought one. These little nugget ice, these pellet ice makers, the soft crunchy ice, you know, like you get from Sonic or Chick-fil-A. We bought one from I don't know where, and after a while, it didn't work anymore because it got a whole bunch of mineral buildup, and nothing we could do would clean it. It made this horrible screeching sound, and we we disposed of it in a safe and environmentally friendly way, as is required for all things with refrigerant in them. And then my wife came home from Costco, and she was like, I bought one from Costco because Costco's return policy means that if in 6 months it gets all gunked up and we can't clean it, we'll just return it to Costco, and they'll take it back, and we'll just get another one. And I was like, sounds good. But man, these little nugget ice makers they'll change your life. Change your life. My wife, she literally every moment she is awake at our house has a cup of crunchy ice with her and is just snacking on it. And the dentists out there are like, that's bad for your teeth. But no, it's not. Because the soft ice, the pellet ice, it's not the way that they make it. And I know this because I had to open up the other ice maker to try to clean it, and I saw the mechanism. They don't take water and freeze it in place. What they do is there is a spiral, a refrigerated spiral, and frost forms on the spiral, and the spiral turns and a blade scrapes the frost off and compresses the frost into the ice pellet. And that's why it's soft, crunchy ice and not hard ice. It's not bad for your teeth. And she will be like, hey, you want to run out and run an errand? And she's like, yeah, let me just grab my cup of ice. And she won't leave the house without like a cup of ice for her to crunch on. She's just constantly crunching ice. And okay, some people would say, well, that's a problem. That's a compulsion. But it could be worse, right? Okay. So, and she's so well hydrated now. These nugget ice makers change your life. Okay. Anyway, that's the beginning of the stream. You always just want to start with a little bit of, taste of life. It's good. It's good. It's so good. These things are so good. So now what we do, I'll just go a little further with that story. In order to help, because we're on well water, and our water has a lot of minerals. And we don't want to, they're like, oh, so buy a water softener for your house. We don't do that because they're expensive as fuck, for one thing. But anyway, we don't have a solid, so our water has a ton of minerals in it. And so that's probably why the ice maker got all gunked up. So now we buy distilled water from Walmart or wherever, and we just have these piles of bottles of gallons of distilled water that we put in the ice maker, hopefully so that the ice maker lasts longer. And that's the life we're living. That's how bougie we are. Yeah, that's how bougie we are. Welcome to the stream, everybody. That's not what we're here for. I always like to start the stream off with a little bit of fun, but what we're actually here for is to talk about FPV and to answer your questions. And before I tell you, let's do the thing where I actually answer a couple questions, because Blunty is already queuing the questions up. Here's the queue. It's already building, right? In fact, we've even got some super chats already. We'll get to the super chats in just a little bit. We're going to just take a couple questions. I'll tell you more as the people trickle in. I want to take this question from Mark FPV. Oh, hang on. Mark FPV is a patron in the Discord server. Thank you, Mark, for being a patron. After a drone crash, 3 days in snow, and changing 2 stock antennas to patch iFlight crystal antennas on my DJI Goggles V2, I get very fluctuating megabit per second with Caddx Vista, even 3 meters in front of me. If flying further, I can get up to 50.8 megabits per second, but still with fluctuations, and I didn't get this problem with the stock antennas. Is it possible that the unit broke? Mark, I'm sorry, man. There are too many variables here, and I'm not going to, like, weigh in. I'm not going to weigh in because, like, you changed the antennas, you crashed your drone. It's like there's too much going on here, and we have to simplify the situation. So you crashed the drone in the snow. Could something be damaged? Absolutely. However, the DJI Air unit, the Vista specifically, is very resilient to moisture ingress. I've heard stories, multiple stories, of people crashing their Vista in fresh water, not salt water to be fair. But the Vista spent all night in the water. They pulled it out the next day, and it continued to work for months or years. You know, it was just fine. So I would assume my default would be that the Vista was not damaged by the snow, but it's certainly possible. You also changed the antenna. You changed the antennas. Did that screw you up? I don't know. But I would start unwinding all the changes you made. Put the stock antennas back on, right? These are V2 goggles, so your connectors are probably not an issue. On the goggles 2, the MCX connector is somewhat prone to being messed up if you plug it in wrong. But that isn't the case here. Like, I would do too many variables. I would test a different air unit to see if your air unit's damaged. We got to eliminate some of those variables. That's how we got to approach this problem. Here's one from Steveatrix FPV, also a patron, also in the Discord. Thank you, Steve, for being a patron. Or Stevie E. I accidentally charged 2 of my 4S batteries to high volt, 4.35 volts the other day. I have since discharged them to storage. I don't know if I should risk charging them again. Okay, Steve, so it is good to be paranoid about batteries, because if you don't know with batteries, it's better to be paranoid than to be lackadaisical and light your house on fire. But in this case, you're being way too paranoid. It's okay. If they were going to be damaged, if they were going to light on fire, they would have done it when you overcharged them. Now that they're back into a safe voltage range, it's okay. By overcharging them, you have slightly, in a minuscule way, increased their internal resistance, right? But it's okay. They're safe to use. They're almost certainly, like, obviously I can't 100% guarantee you they're safe. I don't know the whole story. In general, though, simply overcharging the batteries to 4.35, if they were going to light on fire, they would have. Since they didn't, they're still safe to use. They're just slightly more wear and tear on them than if you had never done that. So I don't think you need to worry about it. Like, the thing is, okay, now, big yellow flags around everything I'm about to say. Okay? Safety warning. The thing is, you can overcharge basically any LiPo to 4.35 volts. I'm not saying that you should. Okay? I'm saying that I've intentionally overcharged LiPos with the intent of lighting them on fire for the sake of doing a demonstration. And I have never had one go before like 4.5 volts. Now, these were generally brand new, pretty healthy LiPos that I was, well, that's not even true. Because sometimes I'm like, hey, I want to pop a LiPo off for a demonstration. Get me an old beat up one so I can destroy it. The point is that just because in general I've never had a LiPo go off below 4.5 volts doesn't mean that you won't, right? So I'm not saying you should do this, but I am saying that simply overcharging a LiPo to 4.35 volts is not as wildly risky as it might feel. It damages the LiPo. It shortens its lifespan. And the difference between the high volts and the non-high volt LiPos is that the high volts have something different in their chemistry that makes them more tolerant to being overcharged without being damaged. I don't know what that is because I'm not an expert on battery chemistries. But you could say, I'm going to just overcharge all my regular LiPos to 4.35 volts. I'm going to accept the fact that I have a slightly increased risk of burning my house down, and I'm going to take steps to mitigate that. And I'm going to accept that I'm going to burn through these batteries faster and they're going to wear out faster. But you could certainly do that. And some racers do that. There are racers, because for some god unknown reason, as far as I can tell, most drone races don't check voltage on the line. Maybe they've started doing that. I don't know. They didn't used to. But racers used to commonly overcharge their lipos just as they needed. And then once upon a time, Alex Vanover lit the pits on fire by overcharging a battery too far. This was years and years ago. He was younger and he's learned from his mistakes, but it was it had happened right about the time when I first met him. And so everybody was like, "Hey, Alex, I heard you lit the tent on fire, huh? Good job, Alex." So, yeah. I wouldn't freak out. They're probably fine, and you're probably no more unsafe than you were. All right, so that's how it goes. I take questions. You guys leave the questions. You leave them here in the YouTube chat. And for anybody who says, I hate streamers that don't talk to anybody except for the super chats, that's not me. You leave the questions in the chat. Blenty queues them up. I answer them. I do give a small amount of priority to these guys over here. These are my patrons, and they're in the Discord. And because they're my patrons, patreon.com, because they're my patrons, they get a little bit of extra attention in the stream. I see a blue-colored question. I'm slightly more likely to take it. But take questions from the chat. And the questions that I always give the highest priority to are the super chats, because that means you hit the $sign down here and you paid a little bit of money. And then that's the kind of the deal as a streamer, is I have to pay attention to your super chats. And then, so on, so on. We'll take a couple super chats right now. Here is a super chat from Talon's Aerial Photos. I'm sorry. Wrong one. Studio 81. Is it possible to mount the motors upside down, and what are the disadvantages to that? I would like to remove the props visible in the O3 and air unit on my drone. Yeah, you can. That's called a pusher configuration. A pusher configuration means the motors are mounted upside down. You 1000% can do that. Here are the downsides. Number one, depending on your drone frame, it may be more difficult to land. Many drone frames are designed to land on the bottom of the frame. If the motors are upside down, you're landing on the motors, and that, of course, isn't ideal. But that's a solvable problem. In terms of flight dynamics, there isn't really a disadvantage. In fact, many people argue that having the arm in the negative pressure side of the prop is better for it's more efficient than having the arm in the positive pressure side of the prop. And I think there's some validity to that. So you 100% can do that. Just have to make sure that your motors spin the right direction. So you're going to take the motors, you're going to install them upside down, and then you're going to look at the motors from the top down. So you're looking at the bottom of the motors, and then you're going to look at what direction the motor spins from the top down. And you're going to reverse the motors so they spin the right direction. Essentially, you're going to have to reverse all of the motors because you flipped them upside down. But the prop still needs to spin the same direction it was, because the flight controller doesn't care that the motors are upside down. It just cares which direction the motor spins and which direction the air pushes. Okay? So basically, you're going to flip the motors upside down. You're going to reverse all the motors so they still spin the same direction they did when viewed from the top down. And then you're going to take your props and you're going to lift off your props and you're going to put them back on the motor. And the props will be upside down relative to the motor, but they'll be right side up relative to the frame. And then you'll have a pusher drone. More power to you. Here's a question from Carlos Rubio. Thank you for €5. Carlos, I want to start doing some frame designing. Where should I start in this sense? I'll tell you what. One of the best resources for learning about frame design is Andy Shen, shendrones.com. Now, Andy has come to focus a lot on cinematic frames, but Andy has a blog for all of his frame designs. So, like, if we go to shendrones.com and we pick one of his frames, right? The Flacco, okay? That's like a 5-inch frame. Andy starts talking about, he's got a blog entry for all of his frames and takes you through his thought process and his design process, okay? And if you're an aspiring frame designer, you can learn so much from this. Like, all of his sort of, well, okay, this one wasn't super detailed. Like, a lot of times he'll talk about, things he tried and things that didn't work and what changes he made. Okay? So there's a lot of value in his blog entries. So that's where I would start you. Chris Rosser also has some similar resources when he talks about his frames. But the other guy, I guess, I would talk to is Bob Ruge. Bob Ruge is Kebab, FPV, KABAB. He has YouTube videos. Now, he's not as active as he used to be, but for all of his frames, he releases a lot of videos talking about his thought process and his build process. So, Kebab, FPV, KABAB, he's on YouTube. And you could go back through his archives and look for that. Shen Drones, Andy Shen, and Chris Rosser. Thank you for $10 from 7 because we rock.
Pre-read the next one.
What's that?
Pre-read the next one.
Pre-read the next one. Which is the next one?
If you're doing super chats.
Yeah.
The $2 one. I unhighlighted it. I wanted to make sure you pre-read it.
I don't see it because you unhighlighted it.
Okay, great. We could skip it then. Wonderful. It's political. We're not doing political comments here, and it was only $2.
Yeah, for $2, I'm definitely not touching a political one. Oh, now I'm at least curious. Oh, fuck you. No, we're not answering that question. We're not even going anywhere near that question. Jesus Christ.
Sorry, I just want to make sure you didn't click it or say it.
Yeah, I'd click it and then start reading it, and then I'd have this exact reaction. No, definitely not for $2. We're not touching that. We're not touching that question. Jesus Christ. What a joke. Why would you? Yeah, let's go there. Talon's Aerial Photography, thank you for a $5 super chat. I've been flying freestyle for a year now, and I'm just getting into long range with the O3. What should I know or worry about? The first thing you should know or worry about is that if you're in the United States, there is no way that you're legally doing beyond visual line of sight BVLOS. If you're one of the 5 people who got a waiver, then I take it back. But you should know that the FAA would like to fine you for what you're doing, and if you're doing it professionally, then the odds of you actually getting into trouble for it are even higher, whereas if you're doing it as a hobbyist and you're just kind of flying below the radar, literally, not literally, then you probably get away with it. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing you should know is, long range, you should start slow and work up. Don't just fly 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers out over populated areas and cross your fingers. Every single person, they say with motorcycle riders, there's people who have taken a slide and people who are going to take a slide. Right? That's not the exact wording. But there's motorcycle riders who've crashed and laid the bike down already, and then there's some who are going to do it. But everybody does it eventually. And long-range pilots, there are long-range pilots who have lost a bird, and there are long-range pilots who haven't lost a bird yet, but are gonna. Every long-range pilot will eventually lose a bird. Even, I think of Wesley Vardy. Wesley Vardy, I don't know if you know who he is. He's a very, very experienced long-range pilot. He did range testing for a while, and he would regularly do 20, 25-kilometer runs. And one day he lost a plane because one of his servos fucked up, and it crashed in a lake. So it's going to happen. But if you're a beginner, the odds of it happening are so much higher. And so you want to sort of work your way up there slowly because, number one, if you lose a bird, it's expensive. But number two, if you lose a bird, you could crash on somebody's house or somebody's car or, God forbid, somebody's head if you happen to be flying over a populated area. Or if you're flying over an unpopulated area, you could crash, your battery could light off, you could start a brush fire. There's all kinds of ways that things could go wrong. And you need to be aware of those things and mitigate them. So flying long range, you fly out, you got a tailwind. You start flying home, you got a headwind, and suddenly your battery won't make it home. Oh, you didn't study the winds before you started flying? Oh, big mistake, right? These are the kind of things you need to think about when you do long range. And I'm certainly not an experienced long range pilot. I have just enough experience with long range to know that, I'm not qualified to give advice about it, but enough experience with long range to know that there are serious pitfalls. And every time I'm out more than 2 kilometers, I start getting real gosh dang nervous about where home is and how I'm going to get home. So, you really got to start slow, find a mentor who knows about long range. There's a Facebook group, Long Range Hooligans, and it is one of the best resources of people who fly long range, and start learning from people who have experience, not me, because I don't have experience, but I have enough experience to say, be careful and don't take it lightly. Unless you don't care about losing your drone at all. Like, if you said, I'm going to do long-range flights, I'm going to fly over the ocean, and the worst thing that happens if I crash is I lose my bird and I crash in the ocean, I'm not going to start a forest fire, and there's a 0 chance that I'm going to drop it on anybody's head or anybody's house. I'd be like, okay, sure, your money. Who cares? Do it. I wouldn't hesitate at all if you felt like wasting your money on your drone when you crash your drone into the ocean. You're polluting the ocean. You know, what's one drone in the ocean? But that's not what you're doing. You're probably flying sometimes over a city, sometimes over a forest, etc. Luis Legarreta. Thank you for 129 pesos, I believe. How does the O4 Lite compare to the Vista? I have a 250 that would benefit greatly from the weight loss. I would say that the image quality on some of the Vista cameras, I'm not going to say superior to the Lite, but like the larger lens and the better dynamic range on some of the Vista cameras, I would prefer to the O4 Lite. But obviously the weight savings are substantial, right? And fundamentally, the only thing about the Lite that to me would be like a deal breaker is the field of view. The field of view is relatively narrow, and then if you turn on stabilization, it becomes unusable. So basically, stabilization is unusable on the Lite, I think. That's what I would say. But if that's okay, you're going to save a substantial, like, you're going to probably save 20 grams, 25 grams maybe? I'm not sure what the exact weight on the Vista is, and on a sub 250, that's a fair amount of weight. So I think it's usable. I think that with an aftermarket camera, with an aftermarket antenna, it's very usable. Is the range more or less than the Vista? I'm not sure about that. I'm not going to test the Vista against it. The Vista is old enough that
it is lower power.
The Vista goes up to 1200. That's true. The Lite only goes to 700. Valid. So it's plausible that the Vista would have more range. Yeah. I'm not going to test it though. It's like I just think that the Vista is old enough that it doesn't really, at least for me, it's not like, yeah. I don't know. I think there's better ways to use my time. Travis Eastman, thank you for a $10 super chat. Should I upgrade to the G3 from the G2? I think that's a hard sell. I think the G2 still holds up very well. You're not getting the 60 megabits per second, and you're not getting the racing mode. But if you look at the price difference between the G3 and so you're going to sell the G2 for $300, maybe not even that. Then you're going to buy the G3, so you're going to be, what's the G3 going for right now? G3 is going for, hang on, $500. So if you were able to sell the G2 for $300, you're spending $200 to get the G3. I'm not sure that's worth it to get racing mode and 60 megabits per second. I think the G2 is very, very capable. But it's your money. I don't think it's a must buy. What's the best 1S whoop that binds with the goggles Integra? Cooper Swart, I don't think you should answer that question right now. I think that there is about to be, in the next month, a whole shitload of O4 Lite-based whoops that deserve your consideration. Right now, is there even a 1S whoop at all that runs the O3? All the ones I can think of are 2S or 3S or 4S. Yeah, I think you should wait a month to answer that question because the O4 Lite is going to be a game changer in that respect. James Cowart, I don't know what you're talking about. James, thank you for a $20 super chat. I saw your email, when I was going through my emails this morning. What is my ultimate field charging box? Joshua Bardwell ultimate field charging box. That's not ringing a bell for me, buddy.
Nerk built one of those.
Yeah, I think you have me confused with someone else, sir. I didn't make an ultimate field charging box. So I thank you for your $20 super chat. Where's Nerk's field charging box? I don't know what you're talking about, man. I have no idea. Am I crazy? Drain Man? He kind of looks like me. That's it. He's confused me with Drain Man, hasn't he? Yeah. Drain Man kind of looks like me. You've confused me with Drain Man FPV, haven't you? I'm keeping your $20 as punishment. We do kind of look alike, don't we? I don't mind. No, that's actually a fair... We actually look way more similar than I realized. Hey, that's funny as shit. No, that's not a field charging box, Big Data Pimp. That's a power supply for my charger. Look, it's right behind. It's literally right behind me on the desk right now. There it is. That's it. That's the same one I built like 5 years ago. But that's not a field charging box. Okay. I'm gonna guess that you got me confused with Drain Man, no, my feelings aren't hurt, but I am keeping your money. Scott Perry, thank you for a $5 super chat. Last week I asked HD0 versus DJI. I got G3 and O4 Lite. Can you increase range and penetration by using the O4 Pro antenna on the O4 Lite? Debatable, maybe. It remains to be seen. Remains to be seen. One thing you should know, Chris Rosser found that the output power on channels 3, 4, and 5 was significantly higher than 1, 2, and 6, 7, and 8. You should double check his video for the exact channels, but the middle channels had significantly higher power, and so setting it to channel 5 would help. That's the thing to keep in mind. Luke Stearman, any plans to review the Walksnail GT? I actually have one, and I do think it deserves to be compared to the O4. Would the backwards compatibility and the Moonlight upgrade make it competitive? Maybe. The GT, I think, is with raw output power, might be able to beat the range of the O4. And the Moonlight camera is, I think the O4 is a better camera, but the Moonlight is not like so terrible. It's not terrible. It's usable. For me, frankly, like if I was trying to get 4K cinematic footage, obviously the Moonlight's the one to get. But for just general flying, the Walksnail Pro camera is the one to get. Such better light sensitivity and dynamic range. Sean L., thank you for a $10 super chat. Let's make sure. Yeah, no questions from Sean, just a donation. Thank you. Martin Seppi, thank you for €5. I bought the V-Fly mini beeper. Can I remove the beeps caused by battery removal? I don't know the answer to that. Any alternatives that beep only when I want them to?
You have to.
You're trying to turn off. Yeah. Go ahead, Plenty.
I think you just triple plug. I don't think you can disable it, but I think you just have to triple plug.
There's a way to turn it off, either by pressing the button.
Oh, okay.
Well, there's a button on it. Is that the right one? Right. The V-Fly Mini, yeah. So there's a button on it, and I don't know the two ways to disarm. Here you go. Via the button or the plug in out the quad battery. So I don't know the exact sequence, but either what you do is, with some of them, what you do is you unplug and it starts beeping, and you go boop, boop, and it stops it. Or you hold down the button. But no, there's no way to disable that, because if you are flying and you crash and you eject your battery, you need it to beep. Right? That's the whole point. So, what's the exact sequence?
This is the Wi-Fi Finder Mini. Now, this is a small battery-backed buzzer.
Two options to disarm.
To locate your model. Now, you can disarm the buzzer by just plugging a battery in for like 5 seconds and then quickly removing it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. and then that 3 beeps indicates that it's been disarmed. Now this short...
Except if you get the timing wrong, then it starts beeping at you again, so it's a little annoying, but you learn it over time. Yeah, that's one of the downsides. Whenever I ran these on my quads, I always made the button be accessible because I found that sequence to be annoying. So, but Martin Seppi, what besides beepers, what do you recommend as a drone recovery option? Some people put like an AirTag on it. That's a thought. Waterproof drone, best battery? Conflicting opinions. I don't have an opinion about, like, batteries are... You looking for waterproof batteries? I'm not really sure what you mean by that. Best 10-inch frame. Best 10-inch frame. 49 pesos. Thank you, David Goulian. Didn't we do this recently, Blunty? Didn't we talk about 10-inch frames recently? I swear we did. You do the live stream clips. Yeah. Is that up yet?
It should be.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to plug my live stream clips channel, Joshua Bardwell live stream clips. What is this, Blunty? What is this?
Oh, just the way it aggregates. Like, it's the same thing, but it's like a different URL technically.
That's weird. That's a weird search result. Oh, well, I guess I'm not going to complain. Oh, yeah, there's 2 different URLs. Weird. Where is the 10-inch clip? So Blunty cuts out clips of my live stream. This was not that long ago. No. Oh, here we go. 4 months ago. That's long. Was that the one?
Pretty sure that's the one.
Okay, it was longer ago than I thought. Yeah, so go on to Joshua Bardwell live stream clips, and we went over a bunch of 10-inch frames. Bardwell talks 10-inch FPV frames. Feels like it was sooner than that, but there you go. Oh, no, here we go. 12 days ago. That's the one. Why would you want to use 10-inch props? What 10-inch frame options are available? That's the one. But my point is, I'm not going to rehash that. Thank you for your super chat, but I'm not going to rehash that right now. Head on over to the live stream clips channel, and you can search for anything you want, 10-inch, and you can find... That's the one I would suggest you check out. Why would you want to use 10-inch props? What 10-inch frame options are available, as well as Bardwell Talks 10-inch FPV frames. Go check those out, and thank you for your donation. Okay. All right, back to the regular chats. We got some super chats out of the way. Let's go back to the regular chats. I have 3 quads set up with Walksnail. Is it worth the money to switch to the O4 Air unit and get Goggles 3? I hate when people ask me, is it worth the money? Because almost always the answer to that question is, it depends. How rich are you? And I don't know how rich you are. You're considering buying 3 Air units at $220 a piece. That's $660. And the Goggles 3 at $500. You're considering dropping over $1,000. So that means you've got money. Is it worth it? I don't know. You have to spend your money. Are you happy with Walksnail? Are you kind of looking for permission to spend the money? Okay, you have my permission. It's worth it. It's amazing. It's so much better. You're going to love it. I don't know. I mean, I'm just telling you what you want, what I think you want to hear there. That's such a huge amount of money. Like, you would have to really just be dissatisfied with Walksnail. Like, what I would do is I would build one new drone. This is my actual advice to you. You're looking to spend money, I can tell. Buy the Goggles 3 and build a new drone. One new drone with the O4 in it. Okay? Or buy the Goggles 3 and one O4 Air unit and put it in one of those Walksnail drones. But personally, I would just build a new drone, because who doesn't like building a new drone? And now you can decide for yourself. You're going to fly the O4, you're going to fly it with your Goggles 3, and if you're like, oh my God, this is so much better, then you're going to happily spend the money to outfit the rest of your fleet with the O4. And if you're like, it's not that much better, then who cares? No big deal. You spent a little money, you could always sell the goggles if you decide you don't want them. Talon's aerial photography says, I've been flying Freestyle for a year now, and I'm just getting... Oh, we already answered that one. That was a super chat. We're going to pass on that. Is the Avata 2 a good Freestyle drone? No, it's okay. It's fun. It's not a good Freestyle drone. The main reason the Avata 2 is not a good Freestyle drone doesn't have to do with how it flies, but how it crashes. A Freestyle drone needs to be durable enough that you can crash it, and you could basically just hop right back up in the air, because you're going to crash a Freestyle drone because the things you're doing are inherently pushing the edge of your capabilities and the drone's capabilities. The Avata 2 does not crash. If I were to fly the Avata 2 Freestyle and be super conservative with it, then I could freestyle it. But that's not fun. I mean, it's a little fun. But like, you want to be able to push your capabilities, and the Avata 2 doesn't let you do that, because as soon as you crash, it's damaged, and then you're sending it off to DJI for repair, whereas a real freestyle drone is going to have more durability. Okay? So no, but only because of its durability. It flies okay, and it could do basic freestyle. How did I mount the antenna in the Tiny Trainer build? Well, you can see it in the picture. You can see it in the picture. It's in the video, but I'll show you. I'm pretty sure it's in the thumbnail, to be honest. Well, kinda. You can kinda see it's just stuck in this little holder here is for the Axie antenna. Hang on. I got it. Sit tight. What the frick? Of course, open a PSD file in Photoshop. Why would you ever not do that? Why does the file association for PSD files keep getting reset on my computer? So annoying. Now we'll sit here for 10 minutes while Photoshop starts up. So that's what's going on there. It's stuck in between the two pieces, because this splits open to let the Axie go in. And so it's stuck into there, and then there's a zip tie right here kind of sandwiching it in there. And that's how it's mounted. So, just very improvised, very janky, as with everything I do. Is it reasonable to run 1900 kV off 4S? Yeah. No, go for it. You won't have a lot of top-end power, but it'll still fly. And some people would say it's a good idea for learning. Let's see here. Sky the Guru says, I ordered your QAVS2 kit with DJI electronics, including the O4 Air unit, but then I realized the O4 Air Pro won't fit the chassis. The Pro will fit in the back of the frame, but it won't fit the camera. So GetFPV is working on that. So I ordered the O3 instead. Was this the right choice? Yeah, well, if you want to do that build, right now you can't do it with the O4 Pro. So you gotta do it with the O3. That's just it. You just have to put that O4 in a different build. As a beginner in FPV, it's hard to decide on goggles. Do I just save up for HD0 or do I go analog? So don't touch the door. As a beginner, the person who would be most benefit from saving up for HD0 would be a person who was not exclusively, but largely interested in racing. So HD0 is hands down the best video link for racing because it has when used with the right camera, you get 4 millisecond latency. So the 90 FPS camera has 4 millisecond latency, which is the lowest latency of any FPV system. It's lower even than most analog setups, although not all. Some analog setups get close. And it has superior image quality. And it's just designed to work well in a racing environment. If you are not if you're not going to be like 60% to 80% racing, or like you're really serious about racing, I would steer a beginner away from HD0. And I in the past, there have been times when I was a little bit more political about this recommendation, because I know that there are a lot of people out there who are big fans of HD0. And disagree with. Frankly, I disagree with some of their opinions. Not the very nature of being a fan of it, but there are people who would say that as a beginner you should consider all the systems equally: analog, HD0, DJI, and Walksnail, and you should consider them, and they all should have an equal chance of being selected as your first video system. And I feel like as a beginner, unless you're super interested in racing, I think HD0 is lower on that list than the others. And I in the past, I've been more sort of political about hedging that and saying, well, each person should decide for themselves. You should draw your own conclusions. And that's still true. But, in this day and age, with the technology available to us, I think that the range and penetration of the HD0 system is so far behind, certainly DJI and Walksnail, and even some higher powered analog systems, compared to the cost, compared to what you get out of it. I just think that for a person starting from scratch, the chances that HD0 is what's going to serve you best, and then, 2 years from now, you'll be like, yes, I made the right choice. Compared to the other options, I just think that HD0 is a little bit behind in that respect. So, if you've decided that HD0 is 100% what's right for you, more power to you. I'm not telling you not to make that decision. But I'm saying if you are kind of on the fence, then I would steer you toward analog unless you're hardcore into racing, in which case, yeah, HD0 is the way to go. But you could also just start with analog and race on analog and then eventually upgrade. But if you're a typical beginner who's going to be doing park flying and just tooling around, HD0's strong point is its latency. And the basic reason why I'm saying what I'm saying now is that your typical beginner cares way more about range, penetration, and resolution and image quality than they do about latency. Only racers care a lot about latency. And if HD0 was like close in terms of range and penetration and way better in terms of latency, I'd be like, okay, it's a fair trade-off. But the more I have, because over the last 2 years, I've been trying to flesh out my opinion. And I've tested HD0 in a lot of different environments. This was not content that made it to my video. I've worked with people who were evaluating video systems for their organization, and HD0 was one of the video systems in contention. And as part of that evaluation, we did a whole bunch of testing. None of this made it onto my channel because this was all work being done, as in a consulting nature and was not for public consumption. But it really solidified my belief that HD0 just doesn't measure up in terms of range and penetration. And there are tests where it's kind of close and sort of seems like maybe it's on par with like analog, or maybe sometimes Walksnail, but then there's so many more tests where it just falls on its face. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to be super political and try and hedge my bets about that. I'm just going to say I feel confident enough to say that. So apologies to those who don't want to hear that, but I think it's true. There are so many reasons to support them. in terms of how they support the hobby, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, you're going to buy a system. A beginner choosing a system shouldn't feel obligated to choose a system that will give them a worse experience just because, the company supports the hobby. You have to support the hobby and deliver a product that is worth using. And my opinion today is that unless you're hardcore into racing, there are better systems out there that deliver a better experience for you. And what HD0 does to support the hobby, totally valuable. But at the end of the day, you're going to choose a system that does what you need it to do. And I think for your typical beginner, unless you're hard into racing, HD0 isn't the one that's going to give you the best experience. I use the HD0 goggles as my analog goggles. They're great goggles. And when I race, I fly HD0 100% of the time. So... anyway. Well, that'll be controversial. Can double-click to ARM be configured in Betaflight while using the DJI controller and an O3 quad? I mean, no. No, I don't think so. If you were using an Edge TX controller, you could program it to do that, but not with the DJI controller. So I would not use a momentary switch on the RC controller as my arm switch. I would use one of the 3 positions because it's critical that you be able to know whether you're armed or disarmed by feeling the switch position. So when I set up the RC controller, I use a 3 position for arm disarm. Absolutely. Or is there a 2 position, a latching 2 position on the RC controller? I'm not sure, and I don't want to go pull it out to find it. But I absolutely would not use the left-hand 2 position because that's not. There's no tactile feedback as to whether you're armed or not. And I don't think you can do double-click to arm. I wouldn't do it anyway. You have to be able to put your finger on the switch and know from the switch position whether you're armed. That is non-negotiable. Non-negotiable. Do people calibrate their chargers periodically? If you were to do that, the question would be, what are you going to use as a calibrated voltage source to calibrate it? You need a calibrated voltage source and a calibrated meter, right? So how would you calibrate the charger? So yeah, I don't think you should I don't think you should need to recalibrate your charger. Your charger should stay calibrated for its life, basically. That's my thought. If a charger went out of calibration, I would be concerned about the health of the charger, and I would be concerned that if I recalibrated it, it would just go out of calibration again, and I probably would suspect it was damaged. Lucy F says, I have a few BT 2.0 batteries and no way to get them at storage voltage. You need the V-Fly Whoop Store. This is the best 1S battery charger, the V-Fly Whoop Store. And one of the things that makes it so amazing is it has storage voltage for your batteries. So that's what you should buy. In my opinion, that's absolutely what you should buy. However, if you want to, you could also buy a 1S series charge board, like the Happy Model board. That's it, huh? The Happy Model? Okay, fine. There's more, but this Happy Model, this is a series board for your 1S battery, and it will let you charge and storage your 1S batteries on your regular charger. So that's a way you could go. But I would personally just get the Whoop Store and use it as your 1S charger. And it does have a storage mode. Leo, thank you for being a patron, Leo. Would you recommend building a Whoop with an analog system or a new DJI O4 for freestyling indoors? Leo, right now, Unless you're building a 2S whoop, you're in a little bit of a weird spot for flight controllers. The O4 only goes down to 3.7 volts. And so you'll need a flight controller that has a 5-volt regulator in order to power the power. And most 1S whoops, most 1S flight controllers just pass battery voltage to the flight controller. They don't, or to the video transmitter. They don't have a regulator. So right now, unless you're building a 2S, I think you should wait for flight controllers to come out that have that functionality. Some of them have already been announced. The other thing to keep in mind is that we're going to see a huge number of O4-based whoops coming out in the next month or two. And so some of those will be very good, and instead of building one of your own, you could just buy one, which I think when it comes to whoops, personally, unless you want something very specific out of the whoop, you just buy one, and then like if you want to change the motors, you change the motors. But in general, the platform as a whole is pretty sound in the bind of flies. Oh, Affinity wants to pick a fight. Yeah, that's what I said, Affinity. That's absolutely what I said. Oh, man. That's kind of what I said. Actually, that's kind of right. I take it back. I was about to get indignant, as if you were misrepresenting what I said. But that's what I said. I said that a beginner getting into the hobby doesn't really care about or benefit from an ultra-low latency link. I stand by that statement. I said that they care way more about range penetration and resolution than they do about latency. I stand by that statement. And if the company supports the hobby, a hobby that they just got into and kind of have no, like, what does a person buying their first drone give a shit if a company supports the hobby? They don't know about the hobby. They're not a part of the hobby. People who've been doing this for years and really understand what's going on, they care that somebody's supporting the hobby, right? Because it's a family that they're a part of. But a person buying their first drone, you can't ask them to spend $500 on a drone that is going to give them a worse experience from their perspective because they're supporting the hobby. The hobby that they don't even know if they want to be a part of and don't even know if they want to support. If you feel like buying a worse product because you want to support the hobby, that's your choice. Absolutely. And I support your decision to make that choice. But a person just getting into the hobby who has never bought a drone before, who's never flown a drone before, who doesn't even know if they want to spend the money and maybe will never buy a second drone or a third drone, their very first experience, to say to them, oh, you know, you need to support the hobby, so you should buy this product. And then they're like, well, this product kind of sucks and I don't like it and I think I don't want to be a part of this hobby. Ah, crap. Well, at least you supported the hobby. How is that supporting the hobby? No. They need to have a good experience. And then they'll be like, damn, this hobby is amazing. I want more. My argument is that you have to deliver a product that meets the user's needs. And then if you also do things that are politically and socially beneficial, it's a cherry on top. But if your product doesn't meet the user's needs, if it's far enough behind the competing products, you can't make up that gap by saying, oh, you do politically and socially beneficial things. You have to be close. And if you look at the range and penetration of an HD0 system compared to a DJI or Walksnail system, if you look at the image quality, that gap is too big, especially for a beginner who doesn't care about. My goal here is to get people into the hobby, and if you give them a system that doesn't give them range and penetration that they enjoy, then they will not stay in the hobby, and they will think you've given them a bad recommendation, and that's not good for the hobby. and preaching to them, yeah, but this company open sources everything. See how good it is for everybody? While they're losing video at 500 feet because they flew behind a tree or something. That's not going to help the hobby. I stand by what I said. What I said is a realistic assessment and observation of the experience that someone getting into the hobby will have. Is it how you'd like it to be? Is it how it should be in an ideal world? Well, in an ideal world, a lot of things would be different. So. And I've spent the last 3 years mulling over this opinion, trying to get it right. Because there definitely are beginners out there who chose HD0, love it, and think they made the right choice. More power to you if you're one of those people. But I not knowing more about you, just getting a super chat question from you or a live stream question from you, I have to speak to the middle of the bell curve. And to the middle of the bell curve, not knowing what video system to choose, I submit that the person, the thing that will give someone the best experience, the thing that will make them the most likely to stay in the hobby and keep doing this is not HD0. And it hurts to say that, because as someone who is a part of the hobby and wants to support the hobby and sees all the good things that HD0 does for the hobby, I want HD0 to succeed. But you can't do that at the expense of people who are just getting into the hobby, giving them something that doesn't meet their needs. All right. Anyway. And also, I'm just one guy with one opinion, and there's people out there who say different, and hopefully a beginner is getting input from them as well. Speaking of companies that are ruining the hobby, DJI just got the Goggles 3 and the DJI Fly Up crashes upon opening. Cannot activate the Goggles 3. iPhone Note 2, oh, no. That's who knows? I mean, suffice it to say, my DJI Fly app doesn't crash. I don't know why yours does. I would not use the DJI Fly app. I would use the DJI Assistant. DJI Assistant Consumer Drones Edition is the PC app. I think is there a macOS version? DJI Assistant 2 Consumer Drone Series. Make sure it's the Consumer Drone Series. There are different versions of DJI Assistant. That's what I use to activate and update firmware. If the DJI Fly app is crashing, that's what I would do. Looking for a lightweight 5-inch Freestyle frame to use with an O4 with no visible props. What's your recommendation? No props in view. You need a dead cat. Did GepRC release updated plates for their frames? I think someone said they did. I don't know if it's lightweight. Right now, relatively few frames have been updated to support the O4. GepRC Vapor DC5 O4. There you go. Like, I only recommend this because the Vapor, I know for a fact that GepRC updated their frames to support the O4, and I'm sure other manufacturers are doing it or have already done it. But, like, this is the first one to come to my mind. Because somebody was like, hey, the GepRC Vapor frame supports the O4 now. And I was like, how the frick does GepRC support the O4 on the day of release, and my frame doesn't support the O4 because, we didn't have an O4 to develop off of. But somehow GepRC can have new camera plates and new updates the day of release. That's the same gosh dang thing that happened with the O3. That it was like 6 months from when the O3 released until the QAVS V2 came out with support for the O3. And I was like, guys, I don't know. I'm not the one designing the frame plates. I'm just a guy who gets on YouTube and bitches. But how the hell does everybody else, does iFlight and GepRC, have updated frames the day of release and I don't? And then, now I've done my job as the guy who gets on YouTube and bitches. Okay. iFlight has 2 new frames with O4. Yeah. Chris Rosser's AOS. Chris Rosser's frame has... Does Chris Rosser's AOS have props in view? Does it have props in view? It certainly is lightweight. Oh, no, I guess it doesn't. The AOS 5 doesn't have props in view. Okay. AOS 5 would be a good choice then. Lightweight, no props in view. Yeah. Of those, that's the one that's definitely lightweight. Is 3 inches good for a GoPro? No. Not really. I mean, a 3-inch drone can carry a GoPro. It's going to fly like shit. That's the short answer. Stevatrix, the NACO power and NACO text files haven't worked since the O3. They only worked on the V2 and the Vista. The ham unlock is now the thing. And ham unlock does work on the O4. James Will asks, I'm going to transfer my FPV plane to HD and I want to put the O4 in it. Would the N3 goggles and an O4 air unit be the best way to spend my money, or do I need better goggles that badly? I think for a plane, the big disadvantage of the N3 goggles is that they don't do 100 frames per second, so you have higher latency. But I think for a plane, the ultra-low latency is not that big a deal, because planes usually aren't doing proximity flying. So I think the 60 frame per second of the N3 is fine on a plane. Yeah, I think that's a fine choice. If it was a drone, I would say, well, you might want the 100 frame per second mode for lower latency. Here's a question from Raivi, who is a patron. Question in the Discord. After connecting my flight controller to Betaflight and radio, it works fine, but 2 to 3 minutes later, my radio says sensors lost, the flight controller freezes. That's a bad flight controller. I don't know what to tell you. You could try updating Betaflight, but maybe there's a bug in Betaflight on that target that causes it to freeze. But to me, that's bad hardware. I don't know what would cause that other than a damaged flight. I've had that a couple times, and it was always just damaged flight controller. Let's see here. What's the largest multi-rotor you have personally built? It would probably be an X-Class, 800 millimeter wheelbase with 13-inch props. It was the Demon 420 kV motors, or maybe it was the iFlight 50 millimeter motors. I'm using Crossfire with the TX16S. I want to get another radio, and I don't want to have to rebind the module. Can I swap the module between radios? Yes, 100% you can do that. Would like to point out that if this was Express LRS, you could just use a binding phrase, and you could use either of the radios without swapping the module. which is one of the coolest things about Express LRS. And the only reason I point that out is because I just got done this last week having an argument with somebody on Facebook who was like, "Hey, look at this Radio Master programming adapter. Isn't it dumb that Express LRS guys need this? Crossfire is so great." And I was like, okay, why are you taking pot shots? So now I'm taking a pot shot. So, pot calling the kettle black, I guess.
I will say, didn't they fix that? It's not a binding phrase, but like, don't you have some like agent ID in agent,
yes.
and then you can technically move the agent to the other one or something?
Yeah, but it's a gigantic pain in the ass to get it working.
Yeah, I don't even remember how to do it. It's like convoluted, but I do know it is
once
possible.
for a video. It is possible. I did it once for a video. It was a giant pain in the ass to get it working. So technically, Crossfire can do that. But I love the fact that with Express LRS, it's just baked in. So, anyway. Well, what a great excuse to take Super Chats again. Lawrence Moreau, thank you for a $50 Super Chat, and Happy New Year's to you as well. Whatever happened to Sharpoo? Sharpoo was, and I assume still is, a lead animator at DreamWorks. When he became an FPV pilot, his day job was still working at DreamWorks. And it was right about the time of Boss Baby. If you look at the credits for the first Boss Baby movie, Carlos Portolas is listed as the lead animator, I think is his credit. Yeah, he basically, dropped out of the... I mean, I assume he still flies. I don't know. But he dropped out of the YouTube rat race and went back to being lead animator at DreamWorks, which is kind of a big deal. So... Binkoro FTPV. Binkoro says, if I just want to replace my O3 air unit with the O4 air unit, do I need a special kind of mount for the camera? Where can I find it? You have to talk to your frame manufacturer. Depending on the way that the O3 is mounted, the O4 may not go in your frame. Well, I mean, you could always just use some double-sided sticky tape or something to tape it in. But it 100% depends on what frame you have. So... it may not even be as simple as a 3D printed mount because the dimensions of the camera are so different. Can you do low light tests for the O4 Pro? Funny you ask that. I just did. And I'm very proud of the testing that I did. I'll give you a little teaser. So what some people do is they go out and they fly it around. And I was like, that's not scientific. Let's see if we can be more scientific. So I set them all up on the bench. And the first thing I did was I turned on auto. Right? And then I turned out all the lights. And I turned on a photography light with a fixed output power. And then, going a little slowly here. Hello. Then I turned the light off. And then I slowly brought it up in increments. So that we could see how they all perform at different ISOs. Right? And then we did some more testing with manual power, with manual ISO setting. Right? And I did all these tests. I did another test at 180 degree shutter angle. And I did these tests with each of the cameras to see how they perform.
Yeah, so, which cameras we were looking at there?
This is all the Pro camera. So everything you saw so far is the Pro camera. Let me show you what test is going to be the most interesting test. I have to remember the tests. So I have an audio track recorded where I talk about what all the tests are. One of the tests is manually setting them to max ISO That doesn't look like this. One of the tests is manually setting them to 180 degree shutter angle. Yeah. That might be max ISO. I don't know. So the next thing I have to do is I have to build a sync track and then remember what, since I was talking the whole time. I know the last test, I set the shutter speed to 1/120, which is 180 degree shutter angle, and then I adjusted the ISO. I adjusted the ISO to get a 0 exposure value. So let's take a look at the last test for all of them. My light is at 10%, so it's a relatively low amount of light. It's a small amount of light. The ISO was around 3200 or 6400, and the shutter speed was around 1/120. So here's the Pro. And the light. There's the light. Again, shutter speed 1/120, ISO, whatever ISO value produced a 0.0 EV value, or as close as I could get. Sometimes it was 0.3 or something. All right, so I'll go back. There's the light, and you can see it's darker. And then the O3. There's the O3 under the same conditions. Got a little bit of noise in the shadows. So, how do you know the EV value? Because in the goggles, you can see the exposure value in the camera menu. It's a little bit cheating, because not cheating, but there's a problem with the test because the way that the light measures the EV is different than the O3 and the O4. So I didn't know a way to do it other than to say, well, we're just going to go for a 0 EV. But like if you look at the O3 and the O4, the way that they're exposing the image is a little different. Whereas the light seems to want the image to be darker. The light seems to want to underexpose the image when set to auto. I'll show you one more test. So the first test I did, I know I know the conditions. I don't want to show you guys a test where I can't show you the conditions. So obviously the video will release and it'll have all the information. The first test, though, is set everything to auto, set the ISO to allow the ISO to go to max. So by default, the O4 and the O3 stop the auto ISO at 6400, but the O4 has the ability to set the auto ISO all the way up to 256,000 or whatever. And then just turn the light all the way down and then all the way up. So here we go. So this is the O3. So that's no light, obviously. Here's 10%. 25%. And you're not going to see a lot of difference in the lighting, but you're going to see a difference in the grain as the ISO goes down and the shutter speed. 50%. 75%. And 100%. Any minute now. Maybe that was 100%. Yeah.
So do you have everything recorded for this one? You'll have this out fairly soon?
Probably this week. I got to record the voiceover and the results. The other thing I noticed is that the O3 seems to do a worse job with the auto white balance. Like, for some reason, the O3's white balance is coming out kind of reddish, whereas the O4, the Pro, and the Lite seem to do better. Here is the Pro. This is the Pro camera, yeah. Hang on. There we go. So the Pro camera is just, you can immediately see the Pro camera doing much better than the O3. Like the O3 was just black all through this picture, whereas the O4 is picking up light from the purple light under the desk and is able to really get some details. The O4 is significantly better than the O3 in terms of just low light sensitivity. And then the other thing is we do have the subtitle file, which, is it going to work? Yeah. So we also have the subtitle file, which shows the shutter speed and the ISO. That's a little small. You can't read it, but I'll include that information as well. But we can literally see the ISO changing. It's interesting that it's choosing 1/200 shutter as the auto shutter. That's kind of weird. Yeah, so the information is there. And just for completeness, I'll show you the light, because why not? I showed you the other two. May as well. Yeah. Yeah, so we've gone to the max ISO and 1/60 shutter. That's the best the O4 can do. The yeah. Now the ISO coming down and the shutter coming down or coming up. Anyway, so yeah, a little teaser of that coming on the channel soon. Eric, I don't know the time from power on until I can arm and fly. It's 5 to 10 seconds, the same as usual. Dave S says, I thought you could manually set the ISO higher. Dave, on the O4, you can set the auto ISO. The default auto ISO maxes at 6400, but you can set the auto ISO to 25,600, 256,000. I think it's 256,000. So on the O4, you can set the auto ISO to have the full range. On the O3 and the O4 Lite, the auto ISO maxes at 6400, but you can manually set it higher, but the auto ISO won't do it. Yeah. Anyway, that's coming. What's the maximum lithium battery size for the Nazgul F504? For a 5-inch drone, I think the biggest battery I'd like to see is about 1,400 milliamp hours. 6S battery. 6S, 1,400 milliamp hours. You could go bigger, but I feel like you're making a lot of compromises in terms of the flight time. How many people are abusing remote ID modules? You'd have to define abusing. How many people are using remote ID modules? LL, I have no idea. Probably not very many. Me, definitely, because as a 107 operator, I can't risk getting in trouble. Earlier, I meant, should I waterproof my lipos as well? How would you waterproof a lipo? Like, the cells themselves are waterproof. The connectors, I don't know how you would. I mean, you could maybe put like some kind of a rubber coating around it. How bad is it if the capacitor is extended with a wire? It depends. Marty, there are some tests that show if the capacitor is all the way out at the XT60, it's basically not doing anything. But if you take a capacitor and you extend it with like 2 centimeters of 20 gauge wire, like it's doing something. It's always better to have it as close as possible, and at a certain point you may as well not even have it. But how bad is depends on the length of the wire. You want to keep the wire as short as possible, and you want to use the largest gauge wire you can get away with. That's the rule of thumb. Insane FPV says, DJI Mini Pro 4 using controller 2 and goggles 3. Can't get the goggles view to the controller screen. I'm sorry, man. That's not my area. Like, you said controller 2, and I'm thinking of the RC controller, but that doesn't have a screen, and I kind of don't know what you're talking about. So I'm going to thank you for your donation, but I can't help you with that question. That's not my area. Any experience with DJI audio? Want no action cam. None of the DJI, the O3 and the O4 don't record audio, so you're SOL there. Evan Turner just released a reel. Maybe not. I just saw it. He just released on TikTok or Reels or something using the little DJI Mic Mini. He just stuck one of these on a tiny trainer. The DJI Mic Mini has a range of up to 400 meters. And it weighs about 10 grams. So theoretically, you could stick one of these on your drone, record the audio track separately, sync it in post, and have audio. But if you're talking about, I mean, theoretically, you could listen to it, right? With the receiver, you could listen to it with a microphone, right? While you fly. I don't know. I would think that the transmission range of this is probably going to be significantly less than your video and control link range. So I don't know how useful this would be, but it is a thing that could theoretically do what you want. But in general, no, there's no answer there. Pavo 2.0 Pro, wouldn't it be possible to put the O4 Lite on it? Yeah, anything's possible. Would you recommend the O4 Lite or the O3? On the Pavo 2.0, I mean, I would think the weight savings of the O4 Lite on a 2-inch drone would be substantial. So I would probably go with the O4 Lite. Unless there's like a reason why that wouldn't work that I'm not aware of, some nuance of the Pavo 2.0. Yes, I know Thomas Evan Turner made a video about it. That's where I got the idea. I said that. I said I saw Evan Turner made a reel. Or a TikTok. O4 Lite or O4 Pro naked? So people are making their O4 Pros naked by removing the case and saving weight. Oof.
And at the same time, Axis has a kit to put guarding on your O4 Lite.
Yeah, Axis flying. I feel like, and when you do the naked O4 Pro, my understanding is you lose the USB port and you lose the SD card, which is kind of shitty because the O4 Pro has very little internal storage. It records like 4 minutes at 4K 60. And I think they're assuming you're just going to put an SD card in it. The O4 Lite can record 30 minutes at 4K 60. Because they knew you'd had to do that because you don't have an SD card. So I feel like the O4 Pro naked is like inviting trouble. I think you're going to compromise durability significantly, and like, how are you going to like live with it if you don't have a USB and you don't have a SD card slot? Like, do you really need to save whatever 10 grams, 15 grams, that much? I would probably just get the O4 Lite over the O4 Pro naked, but obviously you do what you're going to do. I feel like you're spending $220 on this video transmitter, and because you've now taken it all apart, it's going to By the way, the O4 Pro is so good at not overheating. It's so much better than the O3 and the Lite. The O4 Pro, I turn temperature protection off, and it just sits there on the bench, and like it'll overheat. With temperature protection on, it doesn't overheat. It took like 45 minutes to overheat. It did overheat eventually. With temperature protection off, it like, I don't know, because I do put a fan on it, but like the O4 Lite and the O3 with temperature protection off overheat in like 45 seconds. I don't know. Something ridiculous. The O4 is so much better at not overheating. It's pretty impressive. And now you're taking it all apart and you're just making it worse. So, thoughts on O4 plus voltage booster plus lithium ion for 1S application? You're going to need, if you're using the O4 Lite, you're going to need a voltage booster because the 1S battery will go below 3.7 volts. So I think that you should do that. You need a voltage. You need it like, and the thing is, it's annoying because you're probably going to need. Do you need just a step up regulator? Your max voltage is going to be 4.2 volts. Yeah, so you're going to be fine with a step up regulator. You don't need a boost buck regulator if you got a 1S build. Yeah, so you're going to need a 5 volt step up regulator. Would you choose the DJI O4 or Walksnail? Asks JP. And then Zause says, I think we all have this question. Okay, I'll answer it. The O4. I'm sorry. I guess it's my day to not be political about manufacturers. Like, the thing is, here, let me make the question more interesting. Because as a YouTube creator, I have all the systems. So I can pick the O4 today and I can pick Walksnail tomorrow if Walksnail's what I need. I'm sorry, my voice is changing. I'm becoming a man. Let's assume that I'm a typical hobbyist who is only going to invest in one system. Because Walksnail has the GT transmitter at 2 watts. Walksnail has the 1S. Some of the advantages of the 1S get knocked out by the O4 Lite. I think the O4 Lite beats the Walksnail 1S pretty handily. It's not quite as lightweight, but it's so much more capable in so many ways. If all I cared about was freestyle flying, I would be mighty tempted to go with the Walksnail GT and the Pro camera. The Walksnail Pro camera is so much better than the O4 for just typical freestyle flying in terms of its low light sensitivity and dynamic range. It's not going to give as good a recorded image, but that's okay because I'm just going to have a GoPro on my drone. Or I'm just going to fly for fun and record the DVR, and that's good enough. If I were trying to get cinematic stuff, or if I wanted to do freestyle and not carry a GoPro, O4 all the way. O4 all the way. I think that the existence of the O4 Lite takes a big chunk out of Walksnail's value proposition, because one of Walksnail's value propositions is the versatility of their system, that they have a 1S flight controller or a video transmitter, that they have the Moonlight that can record 4K, that they have a repeater that nobody else, DJI is not going to make a repeater, that they have HDMI out without having to do Cosmos Streamer and all that BS. But the existence of the 1S for micros was something that DJI just didn't have an answer for, and now they do. I think that at the end of the day, if you just ask me if you could only have one system, would it be the DJI O4 or would it be Walksnail? Just the overall value proposition of the DJI system is high enough that I would probably go that direction over Walksnail. That anything that DJI didn't give me, that Walksnail would give me, I would just be getting such a sort of a nice, massaged, happy. I'd be like the guys in the Matrix, right? And I'm what's the guy's name? Cypher. I'm Cypher, and I'm eating the steak, and I'm like, I know that this steak doesn't exist, and this is just my brain telling me I'm eating a juicy steak, but I choose to go back into the Matrix, and I choose to just lay there and be fed my nutrient through tubes while my brain is going, and I think I'm eating steak, and that's DJI, and I choose. Oh, put me in the Matrix. Oh, 4K. Oh, look, it's so easy to bind. Oh, my God. I can update the firmware without some bullshit cable that I have to plug in to USB. I just plug in a USB cable and I update the firmware and the goggles, and it works. And it just has great range and penetration and not all this stupid, and just go out and fly. Oh, and I know that makes me a stupid sheep, and that Neo's out there flying Walksnail and HD0 and fighting the agents and is a better person than me. But if I had to, at the end of the day, I'd be 51%. Give me the steak and put me back in the Matrix. And only 49%, I want to wear a cool coat and dodge bullets. So it would be the O4. But I say that with the full acknowledgement that Walksnail and HD0 are the systems that Neo and Trinity would use while they're out there fighting the agents and saving humanity. I entertain myself sometimes. I can't believe I remembered that character's name. That's great. I love that actor. I love that actor. What a great scene that was. When you learn that spoiler for The Matrix, a movie that's probably, oh God, what year did Matrix come out? Spoiler, Cypher was the mole. That scene in the restaurant, and the camera pulls out, and he's eating a steak, and he's like, "I know that this steak doesn't exist," and it pulls out, and he's sitting there with Agent Smith, and you're like, "Ah!" What a great movie. Okay, moving on. Plenty, that's going to be a good one for the Clips channel, isn't it? The Clips channel, I've shit on HD0 and I've shit on Walksnail just now. This is just my piss everyone off stream, I guess. I upgraded from the Pocket to the GX12. Will you be doing a video on how to make the most of its Gemini features? I don't know. I mean, I did a video about Gemini when the beta FPV Gemini module came out, and I talked about the times, the benefits of Gemini, when to use it, when it doesn't have much advantage. And then in my review of the GX12, I talked about, the purpose of the crossband, like how to make the most of Gemini features. Well, turn Gemini on, first of all. You paid for it, you may as well use it. And then choose 900 megahertz for long range and choose 2.4 gigahertz for small antennas and lower latency, although it's not that much lower latency, if any, these days. PAR 2005. My first drone is an Air 65 Pocket and VR03 goggles, but I feel limited flying outside in the winter. I'm only getting 2 minutes max. Yeah, especially when it's cold. Are you using the best batteries? Are you using like the Weebleed batteries or the NewbieDrone Nitro Nectar Gold or the Beta FPV Lava, the square cell batteries? If not, that's going to significantly improve things. But still, you're only going to get like 3 or 4 minutes most, especially in the winter. What could your second bind and fly be? Well, I would probably go up from a Whoop to like a 3-inch or 3.5 inch. Gep RC and Axis Flying and a few others have these 3.6 inch drones that are pretty fun. How would you compare the Walksnail Moonlight to the O4? Well, I would love to compare the Walksnail Moonlight to the O4. In fact, I meant to do that this week, but I can't bind my Walksnail Moonlight to my Goggles X because the firmware is so old. And in order to update the firmware on the Walksnail Moonlight... Pause. See, in order to update the firmware, sorry, pause. You need this bullshit cable. You can't update the firmware on the Moonlight without this bullshit cable, and I have no idea where it is. I lost it, and now I can't update the firmware on my Moonlight without plugging in this stupid cable, which makes total sense. Let's just design this damn thing so that the customer can't update the firmware without plugging a cable. What does the cable go to and from? Well, it goes from one port on this box to another port on this box. I don't know. Gosh, seems like that's the kind of thing you could have built into the device. No? Like a little switch or a little jumper? No? We're going to just give the customer a cable that connects this box to itself? so that when they lose it, they can't update the firmware? This is why I want to go back into the Matrix! This is why I take whichever pill puts me back in the Matrix, and I eat the steak, and I betray the whole rest of the Prometheus. I just want to eat the steak. I just want to fly my drone. I want to fly my drone. I want to have a good link. I want to see where I'm going, and then I want to land, and I want my shit to not be broken after I crash. And meanwhile, Neo's out there like, I know Kung Fu. I got this cable. I use Walksnail. So that's why I haven't tested the Moonlight, because I had to go buy this effing cable and it hasn't come in the mail yet, and so I can't update the firmware on my frickin' Moonlight. It's a 6-pin. It's not a JST. It's not a JST. If it was a JST cable, I would have made one. It's not a JST. It's some other bullshit connector that I don't have. So I had to buy it. Thank God they had it at Rotor Riot. Thank you, Rotor Riot. Because I was going to have to pay $20 to have it shipped from China. You have to plug the cable in because the cable connects the video transmitter to the Moonlight module. And they have to have their firmware updated together. Also, you can't just update the video transmitter without the cable and say, just leave the Moonlight firmware out of date. Nope. They have to be updated together, is my understanding. If I'm wrong, that would be fantastic. So we got these two devices. And if the firmware's not up to date, you can't bind them to the goggles. And you need the cable. They need to be connected to update the firmware. But we're not going to do that connection internal to the unit with a little software-based switch that just connects them and lets them talk to each other when they need to. No, no, no. We're going to have a fucking cable that you can lose. Oh, I'm so angry about this cable. And it's so typical of how Walksnail does things. That's why people are like, hey, there's this new Walksnail VTX that they're talking about on the Discord. And I'm like, oh, good. Let me know when you can buy one. Because Walksnail teasing a new product that they haven't released. They released this repeater. That's badass. And they didn't tease it. It just came out. Any product that Walksnail teases, you're not going to see. And any product, the actual product they release, you'll be like, oh, that's cool. Didn't tease that. And when it does come out, it'll be janky as fuck. Anyway. Oh, and as Crom points out, the jumper cable can be plugged in backwards and it won't work. You have to plug it the right way around. One of the connectors has a little dot on it. So we didn't even design the connector so it could be universal. Anyway, enough of that. Spent a half hour bitching about this cable. Correction on my $20 super chat. Can I get the G3 to display on the controller 3 running the DJI Fly app, iPhone, or Pad? I don't know. I'm so sorry. You need to stop asking me questions about the freaking the Mavic or whatever. I don't know. I don't know. The G3? The Goggles 3 with a yeah. I don't know about the controller 3. The DJI Goggles 3 with the O3 Air unit and the O4 Air unit will display on the DJI Pro controller. The Pro controller. I assume that means the controller 3 won't work. Clav says, yes, you can do it. Okay, well, Clav knows better than I do. The G3 and the O3 and the O4 will work with the DJI Pro RC controller. I don't know if that's the same as the controller 3. Clav says yes. And the iPhone or iPad running the DJI Fly app, I believe, will also work. Mads Tech is here. He'll know the answer. Mads Tech knows everything about DJI. Is he talking about the RCN3? I also can confirm that the O4 Air unit with the G3 works with Cosmo Streamer. That's how I know it also will work with the Pro controller, because if the O3 it works on the O3 license on Cosmo Streamer. What's the best 2 to 6S charger that can do multiple batteries simultaneously? The best? Well, what's a good... I mean, I assume you want like a four-way charger. The Hoda F6 is a good one. The Hoda F6? Yeah. That charges 4 batteries at once. Excuse me. Hoda F6 will charge 4 batteries at once. That's a pretty good one. It doesn't have a built-in AC power supply, though, so you will need a separate power supply for it, which is a deal breaker for some people. But that's a good one. Okay, fine. The Toolkit RC, which one is it? The Toolkit RC, no. Which one? It's the Q6 AC. So the Toolkit RC Q6 AC would be a lot of people's choice as well. It's also a 4-channel charger. I know a lot of racers. I have had mixed experience with the Toolkit RC quality control. However, I know a lot of racers who love this charger, and if Evan Turner is going to sell it on his website, then I don't think he would sell it if he was like getting a lot of returns or a lot of quality control issues. I would say if you're going to buy the Q6, if I was going to buy the Q6 AC today, I would buy the 533 edition. Because I've talked to some stores and I say like, because like if I have suspicion that a product's QC is bad, the first thing I do is I go ask the people who work at stores, because the stores are going to sell tens or hundreds of the units, and they're going to have a better sample size for if they're getting a lot of returns or a lot of complaints. And sometimes the store goes, oh yeah, this product's a piece of shit, and then I don't recommend it. I've talked to some stores who say, oh yeah, we've had problems with Toolkit RC chargers. The defect rate is a little high. And then I talked to Evan Turner when he started selling this charger, and I was like, Evan, it's weird that you're working with Toolkit RC on this charger, because isn't their QC a little bad? And he was like, we've had no problems with it. So I would say, if you did buy one, buy this one from 533. Because maybe Toolkit RC is like, oh no, those are going to 533, don't piss him off. And they like make sure that the guys do it on Monday before they're all like tired and drunk for the weekend. I don't know. But I would, Evan Turner says he's had no QC issues with this, and he sells it and he puts his name on it. I would buy this one if I was going to buy it. This one has a built-in power supply, so it's completely self-contained, and that's pretty badass. Is it? Does it have a built-in power supply? Yeah, it does. Yeah, it plugs in. It doesn't go full power, but it does plug in. I had a quick question about the G3 goggles. Can you change the batteries? No, the G3 has a built-in battery. It's in the back of the head strap. You can use the USB plug for auxiliary power and run it off a power bank. And that's what you would have to do. But you cannot change the battery. Madstech says, I've stopped reviewing Toolkit RC. Everything blows up in the end so far. Yeah, same. I have one Toolkit RC charger that came out of the box miscalibrated, and I recalibrated it, and it's been fine. I've had several other Toolkit RC chargers that shit the bed for no apparent reason. And I've talked to manufacturers who have said that, like, okay, the defect rate might only be like 2% or 4% instead of, I'm not saying it's like, there's a whole lot of people who buy Toolkit RC chargers and they're fine. But, like, I would rather recommend you get a Hoda or an ISDT charger, which seem to have better QC. But Evan Turner, when I gently queried him about the wisdom of his decision to do a 533 branded Toolkit RC, was like, they're fine. And he wouldn't, I trust him. So I would buy his. Alex Colon says, does O4 make using the plug-and-play RC3 instead of LRS or TBS more viable? No, it doesn't change that equation at all. It doesn't change that equation at all. Nothing about the use of the RC controller has changed with the O3 versus the O4. I would still recommend keeping the VTX and the RC Link separate. The functionality is exactly the same as with the O3. Unless Madstech says there's some subtle difference that I'm not aware of, but the gist of it is the same as far as I understand. And people asked, hang on, before I go to this next question, people asked, you tested the range of the O4 video link, but why didn't you test the RC controller? And that's because, and again, Madstech, correct me if I'm wrong. He's in the chat, he will. As I understand it, with the O3 and the RC2 and the RC3, the control link goes to the goggles, and then the control link is piggybacked on the video link. So the range of the video link and the control link for the RC2 and the RC3 is exactly the same as the video link. What's the range of the controller? It's the same. When you lose video, you lose control. If you have video, you have control. That's how they work. So there's no reason to test that separately. Phil says, I'm new to custom builds. Do you know of a calculator I can use to figure out a drone setup's efficiency to estimate flight time? The closest you're going to come is a website called eCalc, E-C-A-L-C, ecalc.ch. And it's sometimes it's going to be accurate and sometimes it's going to be wildly off. So I really question how useful it really is. But go for it. It's the best that I am aware of, and it will try to get you in the ballpark. ecalc.ch. What's your favorite Johnny Depp movie? Thank you, Kmart FPV. Thank you for $5. The Irishman, high up there. What a great performance, right? Fear and Loathing. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, more so because of how amazingly Johnny Depp embodied Hunter Thompson. Fear and Loathing is more about his performance as Hunter Thompson than the movie itself. The Irishman, great performance and a great movie. Now, Fear and Loathing is a good film, don't get me wrong. I don't know. What other Johnny Depp movies? Pirates of the Caribbean, I'm not going to put it up there. Like, his performance as Jack Sparrow, solid performance, no doubt, but, I don't know. That movie, it's a little poppy for me. You know what I mean? Sort by release date. Sort by popularity. Let's see here. Nightmare on Elm Street. Let's see. Yeah. Donnie Brasco, also good. Guess I like his mob movies. Black Mass? Black Mass. Was it Black Mass versus Irishman? What's the one where he played frickin'... What's that guy's name? It's not very helpful, is it? Wow. I don't know a lot of these movies. Oh my God, The Lone Ranger. That one's embarrassing. What an embarrassing performance. Yeah, not really a Johnny Depp fan, I guess. So it seems like there's some movies missing here. No, it's The Irishman. No, it's Black Mass. Okay. James Bulger. Okay, sorry, not The Irishman. It was Black Mass. That's the movie I was thinking of. Well, it must be another movie called The Irishman. Yeah, okay. Great. Now you know. Oh my goodness, 7 minutes to the end of the stream. Is Ciati streaming? Do we get a link to Ciati stream?
I re-queued a super chat. Did you cover that whole super chat?
Oh, thank you, Clueless Chemist. Thank you, Blunty, for a $5 super chat. I think I clicked it and then I answered a different question and moved on. Appreciate you catching that. Does your Luminaire DIY kit fit the O4 Air unit? The light, yes. There's a 3D printed adapter for it that Luminaire has put on the product page. The Pro, no, because the side plates have to be redesigned. What would you suggest for someone starting out who wants to start DIY? I would get the O3. I know this isn't the answer you want to hear. The answer I want to give you is that, yes, we have the side plates redesigned. You're good to go with the O4. I'm sorry that's not true. And it's hard not to see that as a little bit of dropping the ball. And I acknowledge that I'm being a little rude to my partners at Get FPV and Luminaire. In that, like, you know, sort of throwing them under the bus on a live stream. And so I say this as gently as possible, but I understand all the reasons why. Just like earlier in the stream, I said I understand all the reasons why we want to support companies like HD0 who are doing what's good for the hobby. But ultimately, as the customer, you just want a product that does what you want it to do. And all that other stuff kind of falls second to that. Well, I understand all the reasons why the JB beginner build kit, as of today, can't fit the O4 Air unit. Right? It doesn't support the camera as of today. The Pro. And yet, as a customer, you want to buy the kit, you want to buy the O4 Air unit, and so ultimately, I want to tell you yes to that, and I'm a little disappointed that I can't. And when I see companies like iFlight and GepRC have their O4 compatible frames ready to go on release day, I'm like, well, why can they say yes and we can't? And I don't know. There's answers to that because limited resources in the world is the way it is. But I'm disappointed. I just want to acknowledge that you as a customer are disappointed you can't do that. And I am not going to make excuses for us and say, oh, well, because clearly those excuses would fall flat because other people have done it. And we haven't done it. So as of today, if you want to build the beginner build kit, I think it is the best way to learn how to build and maintain an FPV drone. You will have to use the O3 Air unit if you want to do DJI, the O4 or the O4 Lite. But I would take the O3 over the O4 Lite, frankly, for a 5-inch build. And hopefully that will change. Hopefully we'll have new side plates for the O4 Pro camera soon. I know that they're working on it, but there definitely is a part of me that wonders, you know, why that's not available today. And if you're also wondering that, I share that. So, Ciati, here's a link to Ciati's stream. He's going to start streaming in just about 3 minutes. So... The G3 and the N3 support race mode, but bear in mind that the N3 still has slightly higher latency because it only goes 60 FPS. I like to fly my quad over the mountains, but I'm on a budget. Should I choose the O4 Lite, the Pro, or Analog? What about the range? If you're maxing out at 6 kilometers, I think that the O4 Pro can get you there. I wouldn't choose the Lite because it has a lower max output power. Analog, of course, is going to be the best choice for long range. Analog, you can crank the output power ridiculously high, and analog is better in the long range situations where you start to lose video but then kind of suddenly get it back, whereas digital is just like all or nothing. But a lot of people flying 6 kilometers would choose the O4 because it's just easier to use and has a better picture. You may struggle to get the O4 out to 6 kilometers because you can't just increase the power. You can't easily change the antennas. There are going to be people who go 6 kilometers on the O4 and say, see, it's easy. And you may not be one of those people. So I think there's an argument that analog is the way to go. Because analog, you just get a 5-watt video transmitter, you get some high gain antennas, and you freaking send it. And you'll probably get out to 6 kilometers. Do you like the way the drone hobby is developing? No. Nope. I mean, whatever. It is what it is. We live in the world we live in. And, you know, there's a perspective. There's a time to sort of sit in your feelings and complain. And then there's a time to be a pragmatist. And, you know, like, there's a phenomena that happens in like a natural disaster or a war zone, or when somebody has a violent crime committed against them, where you spend time being upset or indignant that the thing is happening to you. And it's a part of the stages of grief. Like, I'm not saying that this is like a problem. This is just how people's brains work and people's psyches work. You spend time being upset or indignant that the thing is happening. And that doesn't really help you address the situation. And it's a necessary part of processing, but it's a sort of a part of, you know, you sort of making your mind work again. It doesn't help you solve the problem. So, like, if you're a soldier and you're in a war zone and suddenly you start taking fire, you don't need to spend any time going, oh my God, is this really happening? What? You just need to start getting shit done. Do whatever your training tells you to do to address the situation, and then you can like have your PTSD breakdown later, right? Not to trivialize PTSD, but, and I feel that to some respect, I feel that way about the FPV hobby right now. Like, there are so many ways, regulations coming down the pike, import bans coming down the pike. There are so many ways in which things are good, like the release of the O4 is so exciting because of the technology. The release of the Walksnail repeater is so exciting. You know, there's all kinds of interesting things going on. The Walksnail GT, there's all kinds of interesting things going on in the world of FPV that are positive and encouraging. And yet the trend overall is sort of discouraging. And so, do I like the way it's developing? No. But then there's a part of me that's just like, okay, well, it is what it is. I'm going to try to make the best of it. And I'm kind of, I feel a little bit emotionally drained from like 2020, when we were like, let's fight remote ID. We're going to picket the FAA and we're going to make a difference. And we didn't make a difference in the larger sense. Maybe we made a small difference. We got some concessions out of remote ID that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise. But there's some parts of me that is kind of, okay, you know, here it is, it's happening. Now, what are we going to do about it? You know, what are we going to do? What are we going to do to make the best of the situation? But no, I don't like the way it's developing. Thank you for a £5 super chat and a very nice compliment, Oil and Steph Photography. And thank you, Jelly, for $5. Got the Fat Shark Tank S 3.5-inch bundle. Should I go with the 850 over 660 milliamp hour batteries? Nah. Resist the urge to go with heavier batteries and make your quad fly worse. As long as your flight time is like minimally acceptable, use lighter batteries, have a good flying quad, and just buy more batteries. That's my opinions. That's going to do it for the stream. Guys, thank you so much for coming out. If your question didn't get answered, then you should email me, jb@joshuabardwell.com. Willie, the repeater from Walksnail is just a cool thing that they're doing. It's exciting. It's interesting. If you don't think it's positive, I understand why, but this is an example. Go check out Aaron Ciotti's stream. What's the best all-in-one for the DJI Lite? Oh. Wow. That's actually really interesting content. We find out what Ciotti thinks is the best all-in-one to build your O4 Lite. Bye, everybody.